All right, I was like a second late, but...
Sure, that never causes any problems. Actually, it really doesn't.
I was like, oh shit, it does? Because I think I do that a lot.
Every once in a while, it takes me like a minute or two to like find exactly where the matchup is, but it's usually not a problem. And John is doing it anyway, so it's not a problem for me.
Fair enough. Did you see his post? I think it was in one of the mod chats, but he said he's, oh gosh, was it edited his 200th episode? I mean, we're at like 250 or something.
Yeah.
And he did his first one on like the exact same date, like late October of whatever it was, a year or two ago.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Chapter 25, Dreams of Galad. And our symbol is the Twisted Stone Ring Terangrial.
Well, Gideon forces Dreams of Galad onto Egwene.
Yeah, this was kind of interesting. I wasn't sure what was happening until like the very end of the chapter.
I have theories.
Instead of returning to her own body, Egwene floated in darkness. She seemed to be darkness herself, without substance. Whether her body lay up or down or sideways from her, she did not know. There was no direction here, but she knew that it was near, that she could step into it easily. All around her, in the blackness, fireflies seemingly twinkled, a vast horde fading away into unimaginable distance. Those were dreams, dreams of the Aiel in the camp, dreams of men and women across Cairhien, across the world, all glittering there. She could pick out some among the nearer and name the dreamer now. In one way, those sparkles were just as alike as fireflies. That was what had given her so much trouble in the beginning. But in another, somehow, they now seemed as individual as faces. Rand's dreams and Moraine's appeared muted, dimmed by the wards that they had woven. Amisa's and Bear's were bright and regular in their pulsing. They had taken their own advice, apparently. Had she not seen those, she would have been into her body in an instant. Those two could rove this darkness much more ably than she. She would not have known they were there until they pounced on her. If she ever learned to recognize Elaine and Nynaeve in the same way, she would be able to find them in the great constellation wherever they were in the world. But tonight she did not mean to observe anyone's dream. Carefully, she formed a well-remembered image in her mind. She was back in Teleran Riyadh, inside the small windowless room in the tower where she had lived as a novice. A narrow bed was built against one white-painted wall. A washstand and a three-legged stool stood opposite the door, and the current occupants' dresses and shifts of white wool hung with a white cloak on the pegs. There could easily have been none. The tower had not been able to fill the novices' quarters in many years. The floor was almost as pale as walls and clothes. Every day the novice who lived there would scrub that floor on hands and knees. Egwene had done so herself, and Elaine in the next room. If a queen came into the tower, she would start in a room like this, scrubbing the floor. The garments were arranged differently when she glanced at them again, but she ignored that. Ready to embrace Saidar in a heartbeat, she opened the door just enough to stick her head out, and drew a relieved breath when she found Elaine's head coming just as slowly out of the next doorway. Egwene hoped she did not appear as wide-eyed and uncertain. She motioned hurriedly. Elaine scurried across in novice white that became a pale gray silk riding dress as she darted inside. Egwene hated gray dresses. That was what Damani wore. For an instant more she stayed there, scanning the railed galleries of the novices' quarters. Layer on layer they rose and fell, as many layers to the novices' court below. Not that she really expected Leandrin or worse to be out here, but it never hurt to be careful. "I thought this was what you meant," Elaine said as she shut the door. "Do you have any idea how difficult it is to remember what I can say in front of whom? Sometimes I wish we could just tell the wise ones everything, let them know we were only accepted, and be done with it." I let that one be a little bit longer because I wanted to highlight the amount of lies that the women have to constantly keep up with. I can barely remember.
The first thing I wrote down was it's a lieception. So it's just like lie upon lie upon lie. So like I get where she's coming from.
Oh, yeah, and she's even lying to Egwene, where she's trying to lie to Egwene about Brigida and lying to the Wise Ones about the fact that they're Aes Sedai and lying to it's
layers and layers of secrets.
And lying to the Aes Sedai about the fact that they know about the Black Aja, like it's crazy.
Like you said, all kind of highlighted over the next page that Egwene shows up and she was like, Elaine, was that Brigida you were talking to in Teleran Riyadh? And Elaine's like, because she promised Brigida she wouldn't tell anyone about meeting with her.
She's like, I can't tell you that I promised not to tell you because that would be breaking the promise not to tell you, so I didn't tell you that I told you that, okay?
Anything I say violates confidences I promise to hold. Even that.
Brett, what do you think about this black space where dreams are that's not exactly the world of dreams?
I think it is like Cerebro, like Professor Xavier's Cerebro, where the light dots are everywhere and you can pinpoint everyone in the world. And that's just kind of the mental image I've always drawn up when I hear it.
Do you think it has anything to do with the black space that you go through when you're skimming?
I would say yes, because I think that there's a very strong correlation between the world of dreams and portal stones and skimming and traveling and the ways. They're all very interconnected and all the descriptions seem very similar. So I'd say, yeah, there's definitely some sort of similarity there.
I agree with that. I think they're all related. I feel like they're the same kind of technology, you know?
Yeah, they're all kind of built off the same platform.
And this is sort of my mental image of how it works is that you have the Dark One in the center as the prison, and around him is Teleran Riyadh. Around that is the void with the dreams, and then around that is the real world. And when you drill and sort of using the real world and then Teleran Riyadh to imprison the Dark One. And I've always sort of thought of the wolves as the gardens of Teleran Riyadh, which are the barrier between the Dark One's prison and the real world. And anyway, it's just one of my little mental images, and I think I've gone off on it a couple of times.
You have, but
I think it's a fair statement too. Just because like the wolves being the guardians, it's like that would be a strong connection of why wolves, when they if they're killed by a Darkhound, for example, they become a Darkhound because they're so closely connected to the Dark One.
I was curious to hear what you thought of that, Brett, because I've heard Seth. I know he has that theory that the world of dreams is, I guess, roughly related to put it shortly, the prison of the Dark One.
And it explains why the wolves are heroes of the Horn too.
Oh yeah, the wolves do come.
Yeah, it makes sense as a theory, and that's why there's also such a strong correlation between like the Dark One and the true power, where it's like an inner power. And then the one power kind of encircles everything almost.
Yeah, it's what drives it on the outside. Yeah, the one power is on the outside of the wheel.
True power is on the inside of the wheel. So, yeah.
Exactly. Stored in the prison at the center. And again, if you want to picture sort of the wheel as the real world, the spoke is Teleran Riyadh. The black space is the gaps between the spokes. And the Dark One's prison is the axle.
Yeah, and that's why that would make sense. If the dark spaces, the gaps between, then you can see the light dots on the outside of the wheel, and Teleran Riyadh is like going inwards into the dream. So
it also explains why the Dark One only experiences a single battle, because he can only touch the wheel at that single point in the center. No matter how many times the wheel spins, he only can touch the wheel once.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I like the analogy.
I like that too.
The way you're picturing it does work really well. And I always think, did RJ have it fully fleshed out in the same way? Or did he have a different version that kind of came to the same conclusion?
I mean, I just know he's got some physics background. And, I don't know. That sort of black hole at the center seems to me, especially when we look at, how the final book happens, where you have literally a time dilation as you get closer and closer to the quote-unquote Dark One or black hole at the center of the universe. It does seem to be a very physics-based way of having that time change.
I'm nodding.
And as well as having, Teleran Riyadh merge with the real world as the Dark One comes into the real world, that flattening of things
Well, even the time distortion, because if you're going to talk about RJ's physics background, like that's 100% makes sense why, if the Dark One is almost like a black hole, why time slows down during the last battle. It's like that makes sense why in a black hole time would be like diluted, or, you know, I don't know exactly what the terms are. I don't have a physics degree, but, and then you have the, you know, stars in the universe being the, you know, dots of life. So, but there's a lot of correlations there that are clearly pointed out. So.
It was fun. I've been binging a bunch of physics YouTube PBS videos, and so
I love PBS.
Talking about like black holes and
yeah.
No, it's been a lot of fun, and it's just hard not to draw correlations to think about falling into the black hole and falling into the Dark One.
If I'm hearing you correctly, the last thing we want to do is fire something into the middle of a black hole. That's what I'm getting out of this. So.
I mean, as long as you can't like pierce a hole in it and let out the Dark One, I feel
Shoot, right?
I feel like the Event Horizon does a pretty good job of keeping us out. But yeah, I wonder. It's like, what if we're just a black hole and dark energy is the universe expanding outwards as it consumes more? Anyway,
Painted Dead says balefire the black hole. Made me think that if you did that, would you then have the black hole as an absence of things? Or like,
you need to use Egwene's reverse balefire weave on a black hole, I think.
yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah. And it would turn back into the actual
because
mass.
if you balefired the black hole, you'd have an absence of absence, right?
Yeah.
The next thing that I had in my notes for this one was Egwene and Elaine talking about Rand, and Egwene kind of makes this comment like he seems so hard now that. You know, the other day I heard him threatening to hang people who didn't follow his orders, and Elaine's like, yeah, well, that's kind of, you know, that's how you run stuff when you're a king or a queen. You can't not do justice because it's distasteful for you, you know?
And that's one of the ways they truly connect. You know, they both really understand what it is to be a ruler, and I think it's one of the reasons they really do love each other, even if they don't get to spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you just because there is that mutual respect between the two. And even here, you can kind of see Elaine being almost proud of the way Rand is handling it, where Egwene is seeing it as he's being unreasonable.
He's being why is that farmer being arrogant and getting over himself? And like she still sees him as the Two Rivers shepherd.
Yeah, and I kind of see Egwene being a little bit hypocritical here, where she's saying, why is he being super arrogant, when the next paragraph, basically, she's, like, berating Nynaeve, so...
Oh, yeah, hypocritical. Here we go.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I mean, it's a huge part of these characters, because as they grow up, they don't necessarily see the other one grow up, and so they still they assume the other one's the helpless village idiot that they knew and loved.
You know, and I totally understand that, because it's kind of like if you move away and then you go back 10 years later and you run into someone from high school, it's like the last memory you had was of that person, but they're a completely new person. Probably, right?
I think I heard some comedian, it may have been Carlin, say that the most terrifying part of getting older is looking around and realizing your peers are running things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time. It's terrifying. That... You know, I feel like growing up, you kind of have this idea that the president is like this highly educated, you know, dignified person, or that like the people in power are there because they're exceptional. And the older I get, the more I'm like, wow, they're not really that exceptional. They're just
we're like barely getting by here.
They're just people who are like sometimes good at their jobs and sometimes not. And those are the people that run the world.
And being a politician is just a job.
They're not probably any smarter than you or I. I mean, by definition, they're likely average.
It's one of the things I love about fantasy is that the people in charge are exceptional. Yeah. That's what makes fantasy so alluring to me, is they're not normal people. They are heroes. They do go through things that would break a normal person. They do have exceptional talents.
Well, and kind of the funny part is that if you ever read a series where the, you know, person in charge was a completely average, if not below average person, you wouldn't believe it as a fantasy story. Like, I feel like a lot of readers would take major issue with a character who wasn't good at their position.
Oh, that's where someone says, Mary Sue, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
The average people get lucky too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people skate through life while their partners do all the hard work with podcasts.
I know.
They just get
lucky.
to talk, and their partner just puts in all the hard work, and they skate on by.
That's
I'm
true.
not saying anybody here does that.
It doesn't sound at all familiar, at all, but it's good.
Tell Danny to call me and we can bitch.
You know what? To be fair, I've offered to do the editing, but she said, no, you're probably going to ruin it. So.
I haven't said those words out loud to Patrick.
I have also offered to help, but...
I think she said it as in, I'm a perfectionist, and that kind of implied that I am not, which is probably fair, so...
That doesn't sound familiar at all. Let's move on, please. He's as overweening as a pig in a pea field. What? What is a pig in a pea field?
It's filling itself. It's eating and eating and eating.
What? I didn't know pigs like peas.
I'm pretty sure pigs eat anything, but I'm not sure about peas.
I really think it's just for the alliteration.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Pig in a pea field is better than, pig in a brewery or something.
Right, yeah.
Doesn't work.
Pig in shit. Pig in mud is sort of the safe way to say it. That's how my dad always said it. Happy as a pig in mud.
Well, I just Googled it, and apparently overweening means to show excessive confidence or pride. So it's like an overproud pig in a pea field.
Oh, I would never have guessed that. I assumed...
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, I kind of always thought it was like overeating, yeah. And anything about pig in a pea field?
No, I'm finding nothing. Yeah.
I'm going to call that an RJism.
There's probably something behind that, though. Like, most of his things have some sort of meaning. I think we would need the expertise of a hog farmer. A swineherd, yeah.
Swineherd, is that still a term? I was watching a random documentary on YouTube the other day, and it was about Christopher Columbus. Sometimes I just put these things on to be in the background, and it just runs like old documentaries. I find it soothing.
See, that's what I do with the physics stuff.
There was all this talk about, so Columbus gets his crew together, and they were and it was full of rapists, murderers, and pig farmers. And I was like, what? How do you... What's so bad about pig farmers? Why do they get grouped in the category? Oh, well.
Well, how do you think the murderers get rid of the bodies? They employ the pig farmers. Their body disposal crew. Also, you can eat the pigs if they get hungry on the ships.
Delicious.
And the pigs dispose of the old rotted vegetables and stuff, too? I don't know. I'm just coming up.
I just didn't understand why they were grouped together. Like rapists, murderers, and pig farmers? One seems like maybe a dirty profession, but, it's profession.
I don't know. Have you met any pig farmers,
No.
Patrick?
I don't even know where I would
Me
find
neither.
a pig farm. There's gotta be somewhere.
Brett, are you a pig farmer?
No, but pretty much if you drive an hour in any direction from where I am, I could probably find you a pig farmer, so...
That's what a pig farmer would say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds about right.
Very, very surprised that Nynaeve apologized to Littell. We're seeing her kind of grow up a little bit.
Elaine notes that she's different and has been talking to herself a lot, or arguing with herself, about you from the little I've heard, she says. Think Egwene inspired her to be a little bit, how can I say, responsible? Self-aware? Adult?
Willing to let other people take responsibility for themselves. But yeah, less hypocritical maybe?
Willing to admit error? Can't think of a good word to sum this up.
One way or another, she was finished with Nynaeve's tantrums. It's pretty much whatever they were tantrums. They were sort of acting in anger beyond the level at which perhaps she should have been.
Maybe self-aware is the right word. Like, Egwene putting Nynaeve in her place made Nynaeve more self-aware of how her, actions are coming across to other people. Just because it's making her second guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, humbled a little bit.
Yeah, maybe humbled. Yeah.
There's a little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
There seems to be a little bit of Rand's attitude about you. Oh, Egwene, you'll be Amyrlin's seat one day when I am Queen of Andor.
Yep,
It's like,
you
will. For a little while. And then if there's a tower then, and then this whole thing about Elaida cannot destroy the White Tower. And then I wager we will find a tower in exile with every odd job but the red. And they do.
Good wager.
Yeah, I'd bet on that one.
This is a really funny point to kind of make a note of here, because Egwene says that Elaida cannot destroy the White Tower, but I think that it's totally possible that if Elaida wanted to, or if she kind of had a free hand, because obviously Elaida is kind of being directed by the Black Aja, I think it's possible that she could totally disassemble the White Tower in a very strong way. But I also don't think that's the intention. I don't think the Black Aja wants to completely disassemble it. I think they want to leave it in shambles. And I know you guys have talked about this a lot, about how the Black Aja's entire purpose is to weaken the tower so that when the last battle comes, they're not prepared.
Right.
But if you completely disassemble the tower, if they essentially lay waste, if Elaida completely rips apart the tower through dissension, having the little tower pop up and become a secondary tower is almost worse, because then you have an actual competent strong force and an incompetent force.
Yeah, you don't want to create a power void.
Yeah,
something's going to pop up to fill the power void. You want a weak tower.
Yeah, you just want the one incompetent tower. So, and I thought that was a really good analogy towards how people are generally gonna cling to a system that's broken rather than
Sure.
start fresh, right? And you can really see that kind of with what is happening in the tower right now, where they would rather try to fix what's in shambles than just start fresh.
Well, it's part of why Egwene had to do the purge of the black, is to start fresh.
Yeah.
Also, it's kind of intimidating when it's oh yeah, she killed a quarter of our number.
Yeah.
Okay, don't cross her.
I get the whole purging, and that also leads directly to Rand having to clear the rubble, right? With the seals, I think it's very similar what Rand has to do with the seals. It's very similar to what Egwene has to do with the tower. You have to clear away all the bad before you can rebuild.
That's a good analogy.
The analogy of a male has to seal together an open hole and a female has to put together a tower. It's just very sexual to me. When you make that contrast, I mean, it's very, in that way, it's the male versus female halves, is she is assembling this very phallic symbol and he is plugging this very feminine hole created by Lanfear. So, I mean, if you don't see the sexual imagery in that, I can't help it.
It is kind of a funny note, though, that Rand is pretty determined to clear away the rubble, and Egwene is so opposing to it. That's something that I always found really interesting in the last book, is Egwene fights Rand so hard.
Well, I think she's right. I think that if he had broken the seals too early, it would have let out the Dark One. The Dark One would have overwhelmed him.
Yeah.
This, she was absolutely no, don't do it now. You're being stupid. And she was right. He needed to break them, yes. But when was as important as the fact that they needed to be broken.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
And the wait for the light, I mean, that was super key. And Logain, had them at the right time and had the message at the right time. So, and I also like the symbolism of the White Tower as the keeper of the seals and the Black Tower as the breaker of the seals, when you want to talk about balance.
Yeah, I agree.
Nodding.
Elaine is bragging that they're perfectly safe in Tel'aran'rhiod as Moghedien's watching them, ready to swoop down and make them and put them in a trap.
Just in heavy quotations, perfectly safe, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Elaine does warn Egwene that Nynaeve suspects Moghedien is trying to find them, at least.
As Moghedien listens to every word. Yes, Moghedien is trying to find them. That's the whole point. And then this is one of my favorite quotes. She gave Elaine a startled look. I'm always careful. You know that.
Egwene smirks, Elaine rather smirks as she fades away.
And this is just more of that hypocritical, they all go charging into danger head first. Elaine especially, more than anyone else, right? Elaine is notorious for going charging in head first to danger. She, especially later with the Min's foretelling.
I think that's my least favorite scene in the entire series. I gotta say, honestly, out of all the frustrating scenes you're gonna read, I think that was the worst.
I'm up there. Yeah, it's up there. I'll
Yeah.
give you that. Because Brigida's like warning her. She just trusts Min's vision a little too much.
Well, it's not even that she didn't trust it; she didn't even think it through, like
Right,
the alternatives. And I think Brigida outlined that for her too, because I think the prophecy was going to be that her twins were going to be born healthy. I think that's what she was going on. I can't remember 100% because it's been a while since I read that, but I think it was your twins are going to be born healthy. And then Brigida goes through all the different ways that the twins could be born healthy, but that doesn't mean that they're not born in captivity or, you're killed during the birth, or like there's so many things that can go wrong.
Yeah, and you can give birth with no arms or legs.
Right.
And like as a captive where your twins are going to be like taken by the Dark One, but basically is what she was saying.
Yeah, raised up into the town.
Yeah.
Turned to the Dark One. Children of the Dragon. I can't imagine any issues there. Nope, no problems whatsoever.
So you're telling me I'm completely invincible?
Dear God, no. That's invincible.
That wasn't in there, Elaine. But as Elaine leaves, Egwene sticks around even longer still and takes liberties going through Elida's documents and things. There's a bunch of things in here in this longish paragraph where Elaine picks up sheets of paper and says, and reports about this or that. I'm not sure how much of this you guys would like to go over.
I've got a couple. Lord of Bashir had taken his army. That name tickled the back of her mind. I think because she knows... Doesn't she know Fail's true name?
I couldn't remember if she had heard Fail's real name. But it could also just be that, the Bashir is an important name that she would have heard at some point anyway.
Because I think Fail goes by that name she uses her full name. Well, she doesn't say, she just says her dad's a...
Oh, right. Yeah, fur trader.
Fur trader. We see that Tenchiko and Terabon have pretty much gone silent because they are...
And are they occupied by Shan-Chan yet?
I don't think so. I don't think we've seen the return of the Shan-Chan yet.
I think they're just under like civil war or something, right?
Yeah.
Or just like everything's just terrible.
The chaos. Because we saw the girls in Tenchiko, and they were there when it just like blew up. They were kind of the cause of it, right?
Yeah. It's like civil unrest.
Said, more than a month had passed since the last news from Tenchiko by any eyes and ears. Others in Terabon had also gone silent. Rumors someone had taken Tenchiko could not be confirmed. So it could be either one.
And there's no hint that Rand is actually in Tenchiko, right? He was never there, as far as I can tell.
That Rand is in Tenchiko? No.
So I have to wonder why that... Maybe someone's just mistaken. Or Black Ajah? Who knows?
Oh, yeah, but the writer suggested that Rand himself was involved. Yeah, no. I think that's just straight up wrong.
Oh, this Red Sister in Camelin claimed to have seen Morghese at a public audience. That, I think, has to be someone of the Black. We don't find out who, but Morghese is gone. She's been gone for a while. So for that Red Sister to make that claim, she has to be lying.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And she might be doing at Ravine's command, since she's in Camelin and totally under his control. I think we actually see a Red Sister in Camelin under Ravine's control.
Oh gosh, yeah, she could even be compelled to say that.
Oh yeah, to say that she saw the queen, or even compelled to think that she did see the queen.
And you truthfully wouldn't even have to go that far. You could just have Ravine telling her to write a letter. Like if she is a Dark Sister, then it's not like she's gonna not write that letter. So
exactly.
I was a bit curious about this next one, fighting in the Borderlands, possibly minor rebellions in Shinar and Arafel. Does anyone know anything about that?
I think that my guess is that Huron has gotten back to the Borderlands and told them about Rand being the Dragon Reborn, and this is sort of the decision. They're about to make the decision to go find him. They could be mistaking just mobilizing the armies as minor rebellion or something going on.
You'd have to assume there would be some pushback from some of the Borderlands people. Like, probably not great, because I feel like the Borderlands have more of a interest in siding with the Dragon Reborn than other, but I think there still would be some pushback from some people in the Borderlands.
Well, and only those 5 rulers know the truth of the prophecy that they have to, obey.
Yeah.
And so there might be a bunch of other people who are like, what the fuck are you doing? This doesn't make any sense. And they can't explain it.
Yeah. Well, general population-wise, too, I feel like anyone who's, lived and grown up with Trolloc raids is going to be more on the side of, okay, let's side with the Dragon Reborn. but there's always going to be some dissenters who are going to say no. So I just feel like out of everybody, they're more likely to be okay with the idea that the Dragon Reborn is here to help. So that's why I would say minor rebellion versus like a major rebellion.
Makes sense. Pedro Neal calling White Cloaks into Amadisha. We've heard a good bit about that.
They got their asses kicked in Falmo.
Getting ready to implement his lion plan. Loose the lion, scare the villagers, kill the lion, you're the hero.
Now he's just worried the lion got a little too big.
There's almost no way that could have backfired.
No, none.
It's like a perfect plan.
Especially when the lion turns out to be a Godzilla.
Right, yeah.
The next one is about Elaine and Nynaeve, who escaped being captured by the agent, Makura.
The Mikura woman, yeah.
That Makura woman.
She ended up getting punished, and in her anger, she fled to the Shan-Chan and gave them the secret of Forkroot. And that's how the Shan-Chan were able to stockpile it, and were using it on a bunch of women, both to find women who can channel, or potentially channel, and also that's how Parent got it to use on the Wise Ones.
Because Elida wanted to make an example of the woman.
Yep.
And we see our first mention of Elida building her own tower.
Is this the first mention? Don't we see it from like her perspective in the beginning of this, in the prologue, where she's like looking out and being like,
I'm going to build my own.
Beautiful. That's where it'll be.
Bigger and better with blackjack.
I think this is a hilarious paragraph because Elida has like scratched out stuff in strokes and written make an example in the margins of the note. And in my mind, I just keep thinking, what happens if Elida has Twitter?
I think we have some possible real-life examples.
What would happen? Yeah.
What? I can't possibly imagine.
It's a good thing nothing like that could happen to the exceptional leaders of Earth.
Someone with an obsession with building a tall tower with her name on it.
Oh my god, it's so good.
It makes sense why this isn't a fantasy series, though, so...
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, sometimes it feels like RJ was a little...
prophetic?
I was going to say Min's character. I know everyone says Loyal is based on RJ, but I'm pretty sure it's Min, so... Yeah.
He saw little things in the pattern around people's heads.
Yeah, I think so.
That's how he knew all the stories.
And Egwene kind of exhausts her interest in going through Elida's papers on Teleron Riyadh, and she walks out to the Keeper's room and wants to start going through that stuff, and Galad walks in the door.
It's very important. Hurrying out to the antechamber, she was about to reach for the neat piles of scrolls and parchments when the room seemed to flicker. Before she had time to even consider what that meant, the door opened and Galad stepped in. That flicker is super important.
Yeah, that's critical.
That's Moghedien changing things and creating an artificial Galad for her to be pulled, an artificial trap of her dreams to be pulled into.
Do you think Moghedien moved Egwene into a dream shard?
Yes. It was a trap of a dream. I think she may have pulled her into... I'm not sure probably a dream shard. I'm not sure if that's what she would use or if that's what she would call it.
Yeah, I was wondering about the flicker.
Reality that she controlled. See a couple more, actually.
I always kind of felt like dream shards, they had a little bit more control over what happens. And here it seems like Egwene is still very much in a dream, just like an altered form.
Right. It seems like she gets trapped in her own dream.
Yeah. But the big kind of indicator is that Moghedien gets it wrong where she picks Galad versus Gawain.
Right.
And then she switches it after, but it's like she picked the wrong boy, essentially.
And it's interesting. I think we get an explanation for why Egwene seems to be in love with Galad in the beginning and then ends up falling in love with Gawain. And I think it really is that, like, in the beginning, she is all about that pretty face. And once she gets past it and gets to know them a little better, she realizes that, like, she really does love Gawain more. I think I choked a little bit when I said that.
Fair enough.
But, like, yeah, the personality really did win her over. And Moghedien was just like, oh, in your dreams, Galad's kind of more like Gawain with Galad's face.
Oh, yeah, I didn't really notice that. And she does kind of mention here that, or in Egwene's mind, she thinks she's not in love with Galad. He's just so pretty, and, so naturally, if you're going to have fantasies in a dream, it's going to be, with the most attractive person you can think of or something, you know what I mean?
Right. And they might just have a different personality. Yeah. You just kind of skip right past the personality part. Trust me, I know.
It's also kind of... No, I totally get it, but it's also kind of funny because I know that, Gawain doesn't, let's say, perform to the expectations that a lot of people had for him long-term in the series, and that makes a lot of people think that Galad was a better fit, and it just kind of brings me back to how young, in the reality of things, Egwene really is, because she's essentially getting together with her first boyfriend and sticking with him till the end. And I don't think, in my opinion, Gawain was like the right choice for reasons. But I also think, but I also think that that's very, it speaks to a lot about how real people, if you think back and you married the first person that you ever dated, it might work out for some people, but for a lot of people, it's not going to go so well.
Yeah. And
I kind of think that's like Egwene's story.
So much of dating is just learning how to navigate those complicated situations. So by the time you're an adult, you have some, ability to do that, whereas Egwene has no experience. Zero.
Yeah, because, start of the series, she's, 16, 17-ish?
I think 16 in Eye of the Worlds, yeah.
So between 16 and 18 and a half when she dies, that's not a lot of dating experience.
It's actually 18 to 20.
18 to 20? Okay, yeah. So still, if I think of, the relationships that I've had in my life prior to my wife, if I had married any one of them, different story, No,
I don't think obviously, I'm not together with any of my exes for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's that you probably shouldn't be married to them,
Her lack of experience is a good point. Because I feel like I'm in a good relationship, but I wouldn't be able to, handle... It's more about me than about the person that I'm dating. It's about maturity level and your ability to... And have some frame of reference, too, for, what you can expect or what's reasonable, even. I think as young people, we have a lot of crazy, unrealistic ideas about relationships.
Do you think that the Amyrlin seat is there because Moghedien doesn't know that she's been deposed?
I don't know. I was wondering about that touch and why she did it, that Galad walks in, is like, hey girl, you want to go for a walk? And then Leanne is there suddenly. And it's like, if you two are going to be canoodling, you can do it elsewhere. And Swan is in the background, signing papers or something. I thought maybe it was just a way to get Egwene to be like, yeah, let's get out of here, Yeah,
it could be a mistake, or it could be an intentional, just because, Egwene recognizes the two. The same effect might not be had if it was Elida. Well, it could be. It could have had the same effect of getting her out of there, so...
I mean, I think she did flee the trap because it was so weird.
Yeah.
So, and then she flees the trap for a bit, and I think she's thinking to herself a few little interesting tidbits. One is more than a year and a half had passed since she last saw Emond's Field. And that I thought was interesting because that gives us a pretty solid time frame.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the banners, the Red Eagle and the Wolf's Head. Does Perrin have anything to do with those? And it's like, yep. And then she's thinking about stuff, standing about, and then we see that flicker again. And that's Moghedien trying to trap her once more.
Yeah, changing things. And I kind of wanted to point out that there are a couple of odd things here where it could very well be Moghedien willing this to happen, but this effect where Egwene thinks of Galad and then can't remember why. It sounds a lot like the Ring to Rangriel's, like the similar kind of forgetful effect. Like once you're in, you don't know why.
Being pulled into your dream, yeah. I mean, because when you're in a dream, the dream seems totally normal.
Yeah, that could happen for any number of reasons. It doesn't have to be a dream shard or a Terangriel or Moghedien doing it directly. It could be any of those or all. Although at the end here, Egwene seems to realize that something strange is happening and flees again, this time into her own body.
And Moghedien says that girl was stronger than she thought, so clearly she was able to escape what Moghedien thought was a pretty solid trap. She realizes she doesn't fall into the dream quickly. She's realizing she's in a dream and that something's wrong, and so she's getting the hell out of there.
Yeah, and of course Egwene doesn't realize what happened exactly. Just she thinks she almost managed to trap herself in her own dream.
Which we know now she has enough control to not let that happen by accident.
On a funny note, it's kind of funny that what kind of kicks her out of the trap is the fact that there's a child introduced. And it's just kind of like, how badly do you not want kids that it's enough to escape a trap set by the Forsaken? So,
and that Moghedien tries Gawain on this one is the father, presumably.
Yeah.
And
that didn't go so well.
She's
either,
yelling,
so.
"No!" Flees.
What can we say? Egwene's a career woman.
Yeah,
she's not ready to settle down and have kids yet. She's got a tower.
Yeah,
to
man, she can't be tied down.
Quite.
It's
Yeah.
a rough work week putting the tower back together. No PTO for that
7
job.
days a week. And you thought your job was hard. She has to keep working in her dreams.
God.
There's no rest. Yeah.
There really isn't.
It happens to me only rarely now, but it reminds me of a work stress dream. You wake up with your alarm going off after having a work stress dream, and you're like, I can't get away. Like, even...
You work, you sleep, you dream about work in your sleep, but you get up and work again. And you're like, I hate my life. I can't even get away from it.
And I made my readout just the last 3 or 4 paragraphs of Moghedien's perspective, because it's less than a page.
Sure, read it and then we'll talk about it.
Stepping up from behind a thatched-roofed house, Moghedien wondered idly where this little village was. Not the sort of place she would expect to see banners flying. The girl had been stronger than she had thought. To escape her weaving of Tel'aran'rhiod, even Lanfear could not improve on her abilities here, whatever she claimed. Still, the girl had just been of interest because she was speaking to Elaine Trakand, who might lead her to Nynaeve Almira. The only reason to trap her had simply been to rid Tel'aran'rhiod of one who could walk it freely. It was bad enough that she must share it with Lanfear. But Nynaeve Almira, that woman, she meant to make beg to be bound in her service. She would take her in the flesh, perhaps ask the Great Lord to grant her immortality, so Nynaeve could have forever to regret opposing Moghedien. She and Elaine were scheming with Brigida, were they? That was another she had reason to punish. Brigida had not even known who Moghedien was, so long ago, in the Age of Legends, when she foiled Moghedien's finely wrought plan to lay Lews Therin by his heels. But Moghedien had known her. Only Brigida, Tiadra she had been then, had died before she could deal with her. Death was no punishment, no end, not when it meant living on here. Nynaeve Almira, Elaine Trakand, and Brigida, those 3 she would find and deal with, from the shadows, so that they would not know until too late. All 3, without exception. She vanished, and the banners waved on in the breeze of Tel'aran'rhiod. It was a fun little factoid that Brigida was there in the Age of Legends, foiling Moghedien's plot, albeit unknowingly.
Also that Brigida's name was Tiadra, which makes me think that Brigida has been around a couple of times since the Age of Legends.
Yeah, or Tidra? I'm not sure, I guessed.
I think in the audiobook is Tiadra.
Yeah?
Yeah, it is kind of funny that she was the one who foiled the plot, like in the Age of Legends.
Right. And then Moghedien's holding a grudge. Yeah,
and then she's dragged this forward 3,000 years. Like, that's quite the grudge. But, I mean, it is the Forsaken also, so...
Right. I mean, they still hate Lews Therin and Telamon. I feel like there's sort of a similar hate there for, doesn't matter who you are in this life. I hate who you were in the last life, so I'm coming after you.
They've made a list of people who've slighted them, and they're going to take it out on them, so...
Oh, to answer your question, Satanis, I think that Brigida most certainly was already a hero during the Age of Legends, or a hero of the Horn, but she wouldn't have known it, and probably only the Forsaken would have known her real identity.
And I don't know if she had the name Brigida at that point. I don't know if Brigida is her most recent reincarnation, or...
I always thought that Brigida comes from one of the oldest stories, Brigida Silverbow.
I always thought it was one of the newest ones.
Oh, it could be. Ton talks about this at one point, and we get a little bit of dialogue where he says that, there are all these stories, and I think that probably, like, this woman, and this woman from these different stories are actually the same person. I don't know if anyone else remembers that. I think it's just a one-off thing where he's talking about the old stories and saying, these things came from somewhere.
But despite all of Moghedien's scheming, when she does find them and confront them, Nynaeve takes her out because she finds them in Salidara and is hiding there.
Yeah, she's having that alternate identity.
Is it Halima?
No. Halima is
right, that's different Forsaken.
Yeah, different Forsaken. Moghedien is I think Halima's not even alive at this point, and Moghedien has found them in Salidara.
Doesn't she... I can't remember exactly who she poses as.
I think she poses as a serving woman.
Moghedien as well.
And then she actually has to do the work, because she can't, compel everybody around her. But so she's asleep, and she knows where they are, and she, knows... They figure out from, the thing she says that she must be in the camp with them. And then she puts the collar around her neck in Teleron Riyadh, forces her to drink the fork root tea, which, because that affects the person itself, carries over into the real world, so they're able to wake up and search the camp for the person who wouldn't wake up. And that was Moghedien.
Right, yeah.
So it's a kind of complicated, and then somehow before she woke up, Elaine managed to create an Adom with no leash and clamp that around her neck. I'm a little fuzzy on exactly how they did that quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's also that quick detour to Camelin to fight Ravine, just, before giving her the fork root tea. Brett, what did you think before? Did you have fun?
Oh, yeah, that was great. I mean, it's a lot more in detail than I typically get to go into things. But it's fun in a different way,
It was nice having you. If you ever want to come back or want to request a chapter, let us know.
Yeah, I would love to take you up on that offer. So I'll reach out. I'm getting at a fun part because right now Danny is right at the point where Rand has fallen out of the tree or off the wall into the palace in Eye of the World.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's speculation as to whether he fell into the palace or out of the palace, or if it's a palace at all that he fell into. So
the funniest things get speculated about when you don't know, when we of course know exactly what's going on.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a different take. So.
And you get to meet Elida, and, he lies at the center of it. That's going to be I want to see what she makes of that quote.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a lot to unpack, but, I mean, I think Elida is such a great character. I always think of her like Joffrey in Game of Thrones. You love to hate her. She's such a good, bad character.
Robert Jordan's really good at that.
Yeah. Or what's her name from Harry Potter, the teacher?
Oh
yeah, the pink one.
Yeah, pink one. Yeah, totally. Umbridge, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, in the new Zombieland, Bill Murray has another cameo. In case anyone's wondering, if anything, that makes it.
Is he a zombie?
No, it's like a flash to the day the zombie apocalypse breaks out, and Bill Murray's sitting in a room, announcing some crappy movie that he just made. It's Garfield 3 in the movie that he's announcing the release of. And he
oh, good God.
That's pretty fantastic.
Kicks some zombies' asses.
As well he should. Bill Murray's getting pretty old, right?
He was gray in this one. Definitely looking older. He's got to be in his 60s, right? I mean, I remember him being in movies when I have no memories of him not being in movies, I'll put it that way.
I'm trying to think, when in the 80s, clearly, he was in some great 80s movies.
Oh, yeah, he was 70.
Yeah. Yeah, 70 sounds closer.
Bill Murray was born in 1950.
Yeah, coming up on 70 then.
Everyone says he's like the nicest celebrity that ever lived.
Who would you cast him as in Wheel of Time?
Basil Gill? Ooh, Shillerific agrees. Trying to think of a kindly old man that everybody loves and is inspiring at the same time.
I'd definitely go with Vannon.
The horse thief?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. The fat horse thief. Because he's got just enough
That could work
sass
pretty
to pull
well,
it off,
yeah.
I think.
And he doesn't look like he'd be moving fast, but he could just move unreasonably.
You never see Shel Vannon actually do anything. He just like, where'd you get those horses? Just picked them up somewhere. And you can just see Bill Murray just riding out with a bunch of horses being like, where did you get those? Just found them. A couple of decent cameos. And he's not in it enough to really be like, or any of the cart drivers or an innkeeper. Or...
Oh gosh, Matt's sarcastic butler.
Is that Sen Bui? The grumpy dude from the Two Rivers?
That could work. Because Sen Bui could be a comedic, like a comic relief character too.
Yeah, comic, like miserable, funny.
I think of more of as the guy who would have been a Dark Friend if there were any Dark Friends in the Two Rivers. As far as we know, there's not a single Dark Friend in the Two Rivers, other than Thane. And he's an outsider.
Wow. Never thought about it, but I think you're right.
They're almost too far removed from anyone. Like, anybody else is going to have, like, a Dark Friend. But in Two Rivers, you're just, like, so secluded. Maybe once they get bigger after Perrin, like, I can see that happening, but...
Why even have Dark Friends out there? What are they going to do with their sheep and...
Yeah.
Wait, what are Dark Friends doing to sheep?
Evil wool.
They're going to overcharge you for good Two Rivers Stabak.
That's what makes it so good.
Dude, Terran Ferry gets the short end of the stick. They pretty much get wiped out. What was the theory that really intrigued me was the idea that when you enter a black hole, space and time swap states. Because, normally time only goes forward. In a black hole, space only goes towards the center. But time can go, you can actually move sideways in time, but only towards the center of the black hole. And it's just this interesting phase. If you're familiar with, a Fourier transform, shifting from, time to frequency, I kind of think of, the black hole's transforming reality from, space into time and vice versa.
I like it, but this is way above me.
Sorry, yeah. Like I said, I got real deep into this, and I'll probably cut it all out because I'm not capturing it correctly. But I'm third-handing some really hand-wavy physics. But it's fun to think about, and then to draw crazy analysis to the Dark One.
I think you should leave it.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?